Some years ago, I was speaking to a small gathering of political leaders in Sydney, Australia. And civic leaders had gathered, political leaders, and even the police staff was there. And the chief of police sitting next to me at lunch turned to me and he said, "Ravi, a few days from now is Father's Day in Australia." He said, "It is the loneliest day of the year for many young people just a few miles down the road from where we are sitting." He said 70 to 80% of that community, he said, I have 18,000 law enforcement working under me, 18,000. And they will tell you it's the loneliest day of the year in that community. I forget the exact number he gave, something like 70 to 80% of them wouldn't know who their father really is. And I remember sitting at that table, hearing that comment and seeing the emotion in the police chief's eyes and just translating that into reality. Thousands of kids who don't know who their father really is. And the reason he mentioned that to me, he said, as you men are talking here to us about our cultural crisis, he said, that's one of the greatest crises of our time. And that's writ large in America as well. Many a young man, many a young woman would be, and if this is a typical audience, I'm sure many of you would probably say you've either understand that situation or know people, and you're close to somebody who understands that situation. When you realize that the opening two words of Jesus in his high priestly prayer, our Father, in the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 6, our Father. Those are the first two words he utters to remind us of the sovereignty of God himself. But in a home where you don't have the Father present, it's a very painful reality.
Yeah, talk about that in your own personal story. And I think maybe many people know a bit of your story, but you're an icon. But you're an unlikely icon in some ways because of the beginning that you had and some of the struggles that you had early in your life, and some of those related to your father.
Yeah, I just finished reading your book in a couple of days. And if you haven't read his book that's just come out on the fatherhood of God and that need, I hope you all will get it. I began it 2 days ago and finished it early hours this morning. It's a very timely book, Louis. And while your story and mine is very different in many ways, it's very similar in some of the peripheral matters, really. I was raised in India the first 20 years of my life. I was born in the south in Chennai, where the language is Tamil. I was raised in the north in Delhi, where the language is Hindi. Their culture, their language is different. Many of their food habits are different as well. My dad was from the deeper south in Kerala. My mother was from Chennai. Theirs was an arranged marriage and a lot that went along with it. But I come from a culture where shame and honor are very real issues. And when you are living in shame, you really want to hide. You don't want to be seen. The highest number of suicides in India are on the day after the results are released of either high school or university, and those results are printed in the newspapers. You know your roll number, and oftentimes you just don't want to tell it to people, but those who know your roll number scroll through page after page and they're looking for your name. You may find this hard to believe, but it's not stretching it by any means. I was a horrible student. I never paid attention to studies. I hated my books. I loved playing cricket. Cricket was what I lived for. I was willing to die for cricket. Put a cricket bat in I remember talking to Oral Hershiser once. I said, "Do you miss playing baseball?" He said, "Put a ball in my hand." And he said, all of a sudden, the memories just come swarming back. And I knew exactly what he meant. You put a cricket ball into the hand of a young cricketer. And I played for my university and just wanted to go for cricket, but I was flunking in my studies. That took me to the point of meeting my dad face to face. My dad was a fearsome personality, very successful at what he did, and my brothers and all sisters doing well. He looked me one day in the eye and he said, "You are going to bring shame to the Zacharias family someday." And the way I was headed, he was right. And my book, Walking from East to West, I tell the story. I got my brothers and sisters' permission to write the story because it involved the whole family. They gave me their blessing. I'm number 2 in a family of 5. And on a given day, I said, this is it. I don't want to face another morning. I don't want to face another tomorrow. It took me years, Louis, to even talk about it. The fact that I talk about it openly now is just the grace of God. And I do it because there's always somebody in the audience who struggles with it. And I tried to poison my system. The family was out. And the saltiness of what I had ingested created that gag reflex within me. I started to throwing up all the poison. As a result, I was throwing up all the moisture within my body. I got dehydrated and was taken to the hospital. Just 2 days ago, right here in Atlanta, while we were doing a program called Refresh, a young man in his late teens came up to me and he said, you don't know how close I was to ending it all till I heard your story. And what I heard in your story, I believe there was hope for mine as well. And God saved me from taking my own life. So there I was at the age of 17 in a hospital bed with needles in my body because of the dehydration. They were trying to put that glucose and all of that back in. When a man brought a Bible to my bed, I had never opened a Bible in my life. I didn't own a Bible as far as I knew. I'd never opened one in my home or anywhere for that matter. I used to go to an Anglican church and just used to pray very hard that the service would come to an end soon so that I could go and play cricket. And in that John passage of chapter 14, which was read to me because the dehydration meant I couldn't use my arm. My mother read it to me. Verse 19, chapter 14. Jesus said, because I live, you also shall live. And I said, whoever you are, you claim to be the author of life. And I just don't know what living actually means. If you will give me the life that you want me to have, I will leave no stone unturned in my pursuit of truth to follow you. That was at age 17. I am 73 years old now. It was the greatest miracle that God brought in my life.